Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we are diving into one of the most serious, dangerous, and shocking environmental disasters of our time. A crisis that has quietly grown for decades and now threatens the future of an entire nation. This is the story of Iran's water crisis, a problem so deep and so severe that experts say it could reshape the population, the economy, and even the borders of the country itself. What you are about to hear is not just the story of drought, not just the story of mismanagement, but the story of how a modern nation reached the brink of a nationwide water collapse. Iran today stands at a crossroads, struggling with shrinking lakes, disappearing rivers, empty dams, dried farmland, and ancient cities sinking under their own weight as groundwater vanishes. To understand how things got this bad, we need to go back many decades and understand each layer of this slow, burning disaster. Iran is a country known for mountains, deserts, and ancient civilization. Historically, people here learned to survive in dry climates through ingenious irrigation systems and careful water management. But over the last 50 years, everything changed. Population exploded. Demand skyrocketed, modern agriculture expanded aggressively, and governments kept pushing for growth without considering long-term consequences. Water that once lasted centuries is now nearly gone, and the results are showing everywhere. One of the biggest drivers of Iran's water crisis is the overuse of groundwater. For years, farmers dug deeper and deeper wells. At first, this seemed like progress. But over time, millions of wells drained aquifers that took thousands of years to form. In many provinces, the water table has dropped so fast that land is literally collapsing. Cities like Tehran and Isfahan are experiencing subsidence, sinking by several centimeters every year. This is not a futuristic disaster. It is happening right now. Another major factor is climate change. Iran is heating up faster than the global average. Rainfall has become unpredictable. Winters bring less snow. Summers have become long, brutal, and dry. This means less water flows into rivers and dams. In the past, snowmelt from the mountains kept water flowing through the year. Now, there simply isn't enough snow. The long-term effects are devastating. Dry rivers, dry farmland, and dying ecosystems. One of the most famous examples is Lake Urmia, once the second largest saltwater lake in the Middle East. 30 years ago, it was huge, deep blue, full of wildlife and local tourism. But over the years, dams and irrigation projects cut off the rivers that fed the lake. Climate change added even more pressure. The lake shrank by more than 80%, leaving behind vast salt flats. When winds blow, salt storms sweep through nearby towns, damaging farms, homes, and people's health. Efforts to restore the lake have begun, but experts say it may be too late to bring it back to its former size. Iran's rivers are in similar danger. The Zayende-Rud River, once the lifeline of central Iran, has dried up repeatedly in recent years. Farmers who relied on it have lost their livelihoods. Protests have erupted. People blame the government for mismanagement, corruption, and the diversion of water to industrial projects that benefit only a few. This is not just an environmental issue. It has become political, economic, and social. As water disappears, agriculture collapses. Iran's food security is now deeply threatened. Nearly 90% of Iran's water usage comes from agriculture, much of it inefficient. Farmers grow water, demanding crops like wheat, melons, and pistachios in areas that can no longer support them. Many experts warn that the entire agricultural model must change, or it will collapse completely. But changing farming practices is extremely difficult, especially when millions of livelihoods depend on the old system. Urban areas face a different challenge. Cities like Shiraz, Mashhad, and even the capital Tehran face water shortages during hot months. Water rationing, pressure drops, and summer crises have become normal. In some towns, taps run dry for days, forcing people to rely on water trucks. Rural communities are suffering even more. Some villages have been abandoned because no water remains at all. People are migrating internally, searching for places where they can survive. If this trend continues, Iran could face one of the largest internal migrations in its history. Another shocking part of the crisis is the drying of the Karun River, Iran's only navigable river. Pollution, dams, and overuse have reduced its flow dramatically. Salt water has begun moving upriver from the Persian Gulf, making the water unusable for farming and drinking. For the people living in Khuzestan province, this is disastrous. Protests erupted in recent years when residents demanded water, chanting that they were being ignored while industries consumed most of the remaining supply. Iran's dams were once seen as a symbol of progress. Governments built dozens of them to store water, generate electricity, and expand agriculture. But many of these dams were built in the wrong locations or based on flawed calculations of rainfall. Today, many of them sit nearly empty. Some experts argue that instead of helping Iran, dam building made the crisis worse by altering natural water flows and encouraging farmers to use more water than nature could provide. The crisis is not only about nature, it's about policy. For years, Iran subsidized water, electricity, and agricultural production. This made water cheap and encouraged waste. Wells were drilled without proper permits, illegal pumping became common, and political leaders often avoided tough decisions because they feared public backlash. The result is decades of delayed action, and now the consequences are unavoidable. International sanctions have also played a role. Iran's economy is strained, limiting the country's ability to invest in modern irrigation, water recycling, desalination, and conservation. While sanctions are not the main cause, they make solutions far more difficult to implement. Clean water requires technology, infrastructure, and investment, things that are harder to obtain under restrictions. Despite all of this, Iran is trying to respond. There are projects to modernize irrigation, reduce water, intensive farming, restore rivers, and educate communities. Desalination plants are being built along the Persian Gulf, but these solutions are expensive, slow, and in some cases controversial. Experts warn that unless Iran changes its water policies dramatically, the country could face water bankruptcy, a state where demand permanently exceeds supply. The biggest concern for the future is what will happen to Iran's population. As water disappears, some regions may become uninhabitable. Food production could fall sharply. Economic pressure could push people to leave the country. Water-related protests have already taken place in several provinces. Some analysts believe that if the crisis continues, Iran could face serious social instability in the next decade. To solve the crisis, Iran must reduce agricultural water use, switch to sustainable crops, repair leaking water networks, stop illegal wells, increase recycling, and invest heavily in new technologies. But these changes require political courage and national unity. Without strong action, the crisis will only grow. At the heart of this disaster is a simple truth. Nature can no longer support the level of water use that Iran has relied on for decades. Climate change is accelerating the decline, and time is running out. Iran's water crisis is no longer a warning. It is a reality. The question now is whether leaders and citizens can act fast enough to prevent a total collapse. As we look deeper, we realize that Iran's crisis is part of a global trend. Countries around the world, from the Middle East to Africa to South Asia, are facing water shortages. But Iran's situation is especially severe because it combines climate problems, mismanagement, population pressure, and political challenges all at once. This makes Iran one of the most vulnerable countries to water-related collapse. To understand the human side of this disaster, imagine a farmer in central Iran who once had green fields, flowing irrigation canals, and a reliable river. Now he stands on cracked earth, his crops dead, his well dry, and his family facing poverty. Or imagine a mother in a southern city turning on her faucet only to find it empty, waiting for water trucks that arrive late or not at all. These daily struggles show how desperate the situation has become. Despite everything, there is still hope. Iran has one of the oldest water histories in the world. Its people have survived droughts and harsh climates for thousands of years. Modern researchers, engineers, and environmental activists are working hard to push for solutions. There are still aquifers that can be saved, still rivers that can be restored, still policies that can reduce waste. But the window for change is closing fast. If Iran chooses reform, conservation, and smart management, it can stabilize its water future. If it continues on its current path, the crisis will deepen. The world is watching, and Iran's future depends on the choices made right now. And as this crisis unfolds, it reminds us all that water is not just a resource. It is survival. When water runs out, everything else follows. Iran today is facing that truth head-on, and the next few years will determine whether the country recovers or falls into deeper disaster. This is Iran's water crisis explained, a story of nature, politics, climate change, and the struggle of millions of people caught in the middle. And it is a warning, one that all nations must